I'm sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful. But we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks. You're in the Corporation Nation radio program. I'm Clint Richardson, your host. Oh, let's see. Where are we at today? We're Monday, the 19th of May, 2014. Very pleased to announce that Mr. Oxygen himself, Ed McCabe, is back with us today to expound upon our interview we did last week, which was on Monday. On that note, of course, Mr. Oxygen has been doing this for a long time. If you go to oxygenhealth.com or MrOxygen.org, there's a lot, I mean a lot of information. His book, over 500 articles actually, Flood Your Body with Oxygen, Therapy for Our Polluted World, is his book. Welcome to the show, Ed.
How you doing, Clint?
Oh, about as good as I was last week. How about you?
Well, another day where you don't have the foot in the grave is a good day.
Yeah, I feel like my body has about 0.2% less oxygen than last time. And I feel like it's going down daily, man.
Well, there's a reason for that, and we can get into that tonight.
Sure.
You were talking in some of your notes you left me that you had an interest in the environment, and so I've prepared some stuff where we can talk about chemtrails and the oxygen supply.
I'd be very pleased to do that, actually. I think my audience would, too, because it's always nice to hear someone who's logical and sane with a little oxygen in their brain to actually talk about these things. I mean, you know, I'm pretty shocked at how many people still don't really actually, quote-unquote, believe that this stuff is happening.
Well, let's just comb through the audience right now quickly. Anybody who has any doubt about how oxygen is important in your life, hold your breath and get back to us later on when you have to breathe.
Yep. Talk to us in 2 hours after you've held it that long. And oh, wait a minute.
It's not even that long, no. Some people, if they held their breath when I said that, they're already trying to breathe. They already have to breathe.
Exactly. It's funny you should mention this because, you know, there was the Anchorage Daily News actually had a very interesting article come out on the 14th of May. And the title of it was Air Force Prepares to Dismantle HARP. Everybody always talks about HARP, even though HARP is one of the more insignificant aspects of what's going on up there. But it was actually a Senate session, very interesting, a Senate hearing Wednesday. David Walker, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Science, Technology, and Engineering, this is what he said. He said, when asked, why are you closing it? Doesn't everybody else want to actually spend $5 million a year to operate it? He said, it's not an area that we have any need for in the future, and it would not be good use of Air Force research funds to keep HARP going. He says, quote, we're moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do. And finally, he says, to inject, quote, from the Senate hearing, to inject energy into the ionosphere, after all, to be able to actually control it, was the purpose of HARP. But that work has already been completed, he says. So now, at this point, apparently they've controlled the weather before 2025, as the military document stated, so they're going to be closing HAARP because they've apparently got better ways of doing such weather modification and control. So that should make some people hopefully wake up that HAARP isn't really the thing they should be worried about, that something is going on out there. I'm curious, Ed, are you familiar with the Keeling Curve?
No, what's that?
Well, Keeling, it's a daily record of atmospheric carbon dioxide from the Scripps Institution. He basically was doing all these measurements, and he basically said that we've basically punctured a hole in the atmosphere, and that we've been leaking oxygen, sort of like a slow leak from a spare from a tire. And I know you mentioned last time. Basically, complementary measurements of atmospheric oxygen is basically what he was measuring. And I know you mentioned last time that we had about a 32% oxygen level at some point in history, and now we're down to about 21% or so.
Yes, and what's interesting about that, for those of you who don't know, is oxygen in its active forms, which is energized forms, can actually be used to, in my opinion, cure almost every disease there is on the planet. And that's why you'll never hear about it, because it's competition to the businessmen that are making the billions of dollars, leaving things just the way they are. So that's why you never hear about it. But the plain fact of the matter is that bacteria, viruses, funguses, prions, spirochetes, spores, all these ways of transmitting diseases to humans are all anaerobes. They're all anaerobic. Or if they're not strictly anaerobes, they act just like an anaerobe, in that once you surround them with an active form of oxygen, they start to die. And if you keep them surrounded with an active form of oxygen, they die very quickly. And so they can't spread. The disease won't get worse. For example, we now have the MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, spreading out of Arabia. There's a number of countries that have confirmed, lab-confirmed MERS cases, and we just added the United States to that list. Now, MERS could be, they don't admit it directly, but they'll talk around it and say if you've come into contact with someone that's had MERS, like the guy that just left Arabia, went to England, flew to Chicago, took a bus to Indiana, and then became our country's first MERS case. Well, there's the second person that was in contact with him along the way that he now is testing positive for it. We've also got another person came out of Arabia, went to Orlando. And so he and another person is also now that was in contact with him testing for it. So oxygen is very important for our healers, unlike the rest of the world. This is not taught in the American medical schools. All the other countries know about this stuff and use it, and have been using it for over 50 years. Active forms of oxygen injected into a human create a wall of oxygen, so to speak, that's stored up in the blood and the tissues, and then when any invading infectious microorganism tries to come into the human body, it just runs smack dab into all this stored oxygen that then end up being the surrounds, so they are surrounded with oxygen, active forms of it, so they can't live in it because it's very simple. They are anaerobes. Look up the definition of an anaerobe. Can only exist in the absence of oxygen. Well, all these diseases, and this is what my book was all about back in 1988, was announcing to the world that this is the discovery they need to know about, which is that all disease, almost all disease, is anaerobic in source. So if these are simple anaerobes, all you do is surround them with oxygen. How can they possibly live if that's what they are?
Well, I suppose it's the same reason they can't live on a toilet seat. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned, folks. Corporation Nation. And we're talking about oxygen. One of the most prevalent things in and on and around and under and everywhere else inside you and the earth. I get the feeling, Mr. Oxygen, our guest Ed McCabe today. Mr. Oxygen, are you kind of like, I bet you people get... I bet you pharmaceuticals and doctors and all the people that have been trained in modern medicine, I bet you they probably get tired of you because you probably say the same thing every time you hear of a disease outbreak, or if you see someone with any kind of illness or anything, you probably say, you're probably like the guy who, the boy who cried wolf. Hey, you could heal that with oxygen. Oh, hey, you're going to die unless you take oxygen. Oh, that venereal disease, oxygen. You basically say oxygen to every, almost every disease that you hear about. I'll bet you people probably, they say it after you hear something, 3 times in a row, you actually start thinking about it and pondering it. But I'll bet you say that a lot, don't you?
I've been saying it for 24 years. Every venue I could find. I've been on over 2,000 radio, TV shows, and speaking platforms saying this over and over and over. There's a lot of doctors that listen and now quietly do it themselves. I've been all over the world lecturing on it, New Zealand, Australia, Scotland, England, Hawaii, and there are physicians in all those places that listen to me. And the awareness, the public awareness of that, is something that I was after since I came out with the first book in 1988. And so they don't get sick of it long when they realize that the things that they're struggling with in their clinics have an answer. Let's look at this MERS thing we just talked about. Okay, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome just got into America, 4 confirmed lab cases by the CDC. So what's that mean to you? Well, people who get it, 30% die. 30% outright die. And every single article you see on that says there is no cure. There is no cure. There is no... Over and over and over and over. Every single article has that phrase in it. Every news story has that phrase in it. And what they're trying to do is probably, I'm thinking the more greedy ones, trying to get your subconscious to believe that there isn't a solution for this. And it's outright fraud. If the MERS infectious agent, let's call it, is an anaerobe, or acts just like an anaerobe, in that if you surround it with active oxygen and it dies because it can't live in nature's abundant oxygen and natural ozone that nature has all around us, which sterilizes the water, the air, the food, the animals, the crops they eat, that's all being sterilized by nature's oxygen. Now, what I wanted to get into today was how that supply of this natural healing agent that we're talking about, oxygen, in its active form, is really in danger. And what they found out was Geoengineering Watch, it's called geoengineeringwatch.org, their article documents how chemtrails are killing plankton. Now, let's stop and think for a minute. Chemtrails are killing plankton. Well, that's no big deal. Otherwise, should I be worried about it? One more news factoid. Excuse me, half the oxygen supply on the planet is from plankton. So if oxygen is necessary to defeat disease within the human body, and you mentioned Scripps Institute earlier, well, their published material clearly shows that the neutrophils in the human body produce ozone and hydrogen peroxide, which are naturally produced in the body and are 2 forms of the delivery of active oxygen to the human body, which immediately surrounds everything that your immune system is going after. So your immune system runs on oxygen, stable oxygen, which your body turns into active oxygen, peroxide and medical ozone, and this is what's used by physicians worldwide to treat disease, to treat plagues, etc., except the news has a total blackout on these facts that we're telling you on this radio show today. So the first thing they try to tell you is that the ozone layer is some sort of a fixed thing in the air and it just sits there. That's not true at all. The The ozone layer, which is supposedly protecting us from UV rays, the ozone layer comes from oxygen. The oxygen comes from the plankton and the new growth of the forest. So you see the oxygen is created by the plant life, rises into the air. The top part of the oxygen is struck by the sun's light, turned into ozone. So ozone's not blocking the UV rays. Ozone is using up the sun's energy in its creation so that they never come through the filter of the ozone layer to strike the earth. But with so much spraying of the chemtrails, what we're finding is the ozone layer is thinning and the oxygen is disappearing. Now, there's two basic vectors for that. And remember, the oxygen is your immune system. Oxygen is what you breathe. Without it, you're all dead. Sorry, that's the way it is. So somebody should better take this seriously. Our ozone layer is suddenly rapidly disappearing. No ozone layer allows the unopposing skyrocketing UVA, B, and C rays to seriously flood onto the Earth. The ozone uses up the UV. Now, what if the oxygen is being used up and bound up by chemtrails? I mean, the spraying here in Florida is horrible sometimes. I'll look up. It looks like a spider web above my house.
Well, and like you said, the oxygen actually seeks out things to combine with. That's what minerals and elements do. They actually seek other electrically charged things. They combine together to form compounds. So if there's a layer of basically compounds, then the oxygen is going to actually seek out those things to attach to, right? And then it's not going to go up.
That's right. So oxygen is being bound up, burnt up, used up by pollution. And then if you add the new phenomenon of these stupid chemtrails, which just are covering the planet, ruining the plankton's ability to grow in the first place, Geoengineering Watch, the whole point of their article is that the chemtrails are killing the plankton, which is the source of oxygen, which turns into ozone and blocks the UV rays, or actually uses it up. So they went out and got some machines, and expert technicians, brand new UV, A, B, and C machines. In California, they measured the ultraviolet rays coming into California, and they found that it's only supposed to be UV, B, and C, which is the bad ones. They're only supposed to be 5%. They're now 75%. So it's just gone up exponentially, the rate at which the UV is flooding the planet, killing the plankton, killing the shrubs, the bushes, the trees, the new growth of the forest, all the things that make the oxygen so that the UV doesn't burn us up. So they're ringing the fire alarm bell. They're saying, well, look, we're at the point now where you're killing the source of oxygen on the planet from all these chemtrails, the plankton. And once you get rid of the plankton, we're only going to have half the oxygen we have now, which is already at a reduced level, in my opinion. So, let alone some people will be dying first and others will be weaker first, and then eventually there won't be enough oxygen for anybody, and everybody has to be flying around with a tank on their back or something. I just don't know what this is going to turn into, but it's horrible in what's going on. So the ozone doesn't block the UV rays, it uses them up. If there's no oxygen supply, there is no ozone. And there was a great article by Dane Washington.
Was it Dane Wigington? Yeah, Dane Wigington over there at Geoengineering Watch. He does have some... the rate of species extinction, of course, is another thing to be very concerned about. We'll be back, folks, with Mr. Oxygen. Stay tuned.
There's a solution.
I'm reminded of my well, I can't believe I can actually say this now. I guess I can. I'm reminded of my more youthful days when I worked for the airlines, and there was a couple of planes. I worked at the gate taking tickets, and I was on the radio, and I'd go down back and forth between the planes, and A couple of those pilots I knew, they would let me come up and sit in the cockpit, and I would basically, it was as if I was dealing drugs or something. I'd be like, "Hey, man, give me a hit of that," and I'd put on their mask and I'd suck in some oxygen, because I'll tell you what, those pilots, man, they hit that oxygen even though they're not supposed to. They hit that oxygen because it gives you energy, wakes you up, it makes you feel good. It alerts you. I mean, it does wonders for the soul when you hit that oxygen. It is like a drug. It's the best drug in the world, if you ask me. To me, Ed, it seems like they should be selling oxygen instead of sodas. You should just open up a can of oxygen and suck it in.
About what you're talking about there with the airlines is to save money. They turn down the oxygen on long flights, because it takes a little more energy, I guess, to burn a little more gas to create the oxygen in their concentrators. So something you can all do, everybody who's listening, is when you get on a plane, request that the air packs, AIRPACS, all be turned on, because you have a hard time breathing or something. Just tell them you want that to happen, and they will do it. They're glad to do it if it's requested by a customer.
Otherwise, I'm sure. I'm sure the flight attendants are very happy to have, they're on there all day. I'm sure they're happy to have oxygen. The pilots get to hit their own. But, yeah, that's actually a brilliant idea. They're just called the air packs.
Air packs, yeah. And the thing to remember is these diseases coming out of the Middle East or whatever, they're just a plane ride away from any city in the country. So what's the best thing we could do? Well, if they were enlightened scientifically, they would put ozone at a low level into the air of all the airline passengers' air, so that if the disease starts to leave someone when they breathe out, immediately the ozone will kill, stopping the airborne transmission of the anaerobe, because the anaerobe can't live again. And not even on a surface, like you put it on, the back of a seat, the shopping cart, down at the supermarket. They can't live when you have enough active oxygen in the air, in the food, in the water, and in the air of the places you go to shop, work, buy food, etc. Now, the beauty of all this is everyone who is properly oxygenated, in my opinion, and this is what I've seen from interviewing thousands of people over 26 years who have done these sort of things, is the people start looking younger. They get healthier. They all say immediately, I have more energy. That's amazing. I thought I was just getting old age, and, I was stuck with all the stiffness and all that. And those that have supplemented correctly tell me that it all goes away. They all say, we used to get sick all the time. We don't get sick anymore. Our kids we used to be deathly afraid of the flu, or MERS now, in the public school system. SARS, Ebola, you name it, all these crazy new things. Folks, they're still simple anaerobes. They're all anaerobes. Anaerobes are primitive life forms that evolved before there was a lot of oxygen in the atmosphere and on the planet. So that's what they are. And nature provides us with our own safety net of a nice, robustly healthy planet full of oxygen and plenty of ozone, because as soon as the oxygen rises up into the air, it's struck by the sun's light, it turns it from O2 into O1, 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 O1. All the O1s get together and form O3, O4, O5, O6, O21, long chain polymorphic forms of ozone and other oxygen species. They're now heavier than oxygen. They're heavier than air. So they fall to Earth. So that's how nature is washing and scrubbing the creation here. By the creation of the ozone from the natural processes of the plankton and the new growth of the forest, rising up into the air, not being overcome with chemtrails on the way up, go up into the atmosphere, become ozone, fall to the Earth, purify the water, the food, the air, the people, the animals, and things are in sync. When you get a pollution bag, like we're in a bag of pollution on this planet, it can overpower the natural systems. And that's what this Geoengineering Watch article that we were just talking about is talking about, is that the natural regenerative systems for our health and our vitality on this planet are being severely compromised by pollution, especially the stupidity of polluting the air on purpose with these chemtrails, with the barium, and they've even found human blood particles in this chemtrail stuff. They tell the pilots, oh, it's necessary for national defense, and it's not. That's not what it's about. You're not going to hear about what it was about until they defund the program, and then they admit it was doing it all along, just like the weather engineering with HAARP. They won't admit anything, but that stuff is just killing the planet. It's just incredible. I wrote, so many pilots and technicians are blindly grabbing the paycheck, and like good little higher and lower level Nazis, dismiss all complaints and keep the spraying going. They and everyone else need to be told right up to in their face that they're actually rapidly killing all life on Earth, us, them, and all our families and children, and their families and their own children. Now, is there any truth to this? Well, as soon as Geoengineering Watchers orgs published this article, the whole site went down immediately. Boom. So, I don't know, coincidence?
Nice. Well, you know, we're just looking in the chat room, and chat room, by the way, is corporationnation.chatango.com. And they're basically talking about the fact that oxygen is also used as a supplement in a lot of the sports, different sports, to really, it does so much, of course, as you've talked about.
Athlete after athlete after athlete has come to me after solving their problem of being tired. National Olympic champions in New Zealand were on it. I did a tour there for a manufacturer, and their champions were on it. I personally know bodybuilders, people that get on treadmills, runners, bicyclists. They all would hit the wall. It's called hitting the wall. When you get so tired, you just can't go anymore. You're out. Your body is deficient in oxygen. It hasn't replaced the supply yet, replaced the reserves, and you're done for. While all the people I interview later on, after they've been supplementing with forms of oxygen, active oxygen, which are readily available now in the marketplace because people haven't, worried too much about these plagues showing up here, but now maybe they should, and maybe you should stock up because maybe you won't be able to get it later on. But all these athletes that I interview, they say, I could go, like this bike racer, he says, I can go miles and miles more than I could before. Another guy can only do, let's just use the number 20 minutes on a treadmill at a certain speed. He says he now does 30 and 40 minutes at the same speed on the treadmill. The only thing that's changed is that he supplemented his body with oxygen, so his body is rich in oxygen reserves. The lymph system, the cells, etc., they get full of oxygen. And then there's, of course, the mineral component to it. I have a formula that I've come up with called oxysulfur. And oxysulfur, what sulfur does is organic crystalline forms of sulfur are almost living, just like the people say, well, viruses aren't alive. Well, how do they move around and reproduce if they're not alive? Well, you find that lignin, Lignin, which is in all plants, animals, birds, everybody, this lignin is the sulfur. The sulfur is what holds together connectively tissue, everything that's alive. What did they do in 1954? They stopped putting sulfur into the agricultural soils. So our food doesn't have organic crystalline form sulfur in it anymore. They have chemical forms of sulfur from the fertilizer, but it's not the same thing at all. And what does
MSM stand for when it comes to sulfur?
Methyl sulfamine, something like that. You caught me off guard.
Well, that seems to be the one that seems to be a selling point, is why I ask.
Oh, well, most of the MSM doesn't work. That's why I had to come out with the oxysulfur, because the MSM itself was lifeless. There are certain things, ways they package it, produce it, put it in the machines, that wrap it up and put it in the bottles that destroy it. And so to make sure everybody has a brand that's fresh and available, I had to come up with the oxysulfur. So,
well, would it be more accurate instead of to say necessarily living? Because of course you'd have to define what life is. Would it be more accurate to say that it's electrically charged?
Well, I would tend towards that kind of an explanation because ozone, for example, collects the energy of the sun, and the energy of the sun, the oxygen collects it so much that the oxygen O2 explodes into O1s that are so highly charged they don't have to hold hands anymore to be O2. So you've got all these O1s floating around, which then become the ozone, which then is injected by physicians into people's bodies here. And so what you actually are transferring is the photonic energy of the sun, which then becomes sort of an energy plasma form of energy, but they just kind of switch the definition of the words like photon and electron. If you try to go look at the definition of them, you'll be hard-pressed to see, well, there's not much difference here at all. Well, it's that energy. It's that energy, that life force that gets put into the ozone by nature or created in an ozone medical generating machine here on the planet.
Sorry, man. It sounds like we're getting a commercial. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Maybe if I press this button. Imagine every person that you see is somewhat different from every other person in the world. Some can do something.
You know, I'd really like you to speak to this. I'm pretty sure I have a grasp on this. I study so many different subjects, of course, but you're speaking of sulfur, and of course you're speaking of the true form of sulfur. In other words, not necessarily a form of sulfur that's in a compound state. One of your products also is called oxy. Well, I shouldn't say it's your product, but you know, we all understand how you have to separate because of the legal aspects of this. But one of the things that you have that I wanted to ask you about is called oxymins, liquid fulvic and humic nano-ionic mineral complex. There's a lot to be said in that particular grouping, but as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the reason that 99.99999% of the minerals, supplements, your Centrum and all your products out there that you find at Walmart, basically on the vitamin shelf, are pretty much worthless because they're put into a form that is in a compound form. So, in other words, like oxygen is always seeking out something to attach to, so are all of these minerals. They're magnetically, ionically charged to attach to each other and do wonderful things in the body. So if you put them all into a pill form, take calcium carbonate, for instance. It's just chalk. You can write on the chalkboard with it. It's not going to do anything. It's not water soluble. Most of the stuff you get in the store is not water soluble, so it's worthless in the body, and it actually starts building up, and your body recognizes it like, oh, I have so much, like these women can have calcium carbonate all throughout their body, and yet their bones can't suck any of it up, and they get osteoporosis because they don't have it in the correct form. So you've done the same thing as a few other people out there, because you understand, obviously, that like the plant kingdom, the fulvic acids and the humic acids in the soil break down the minerals. I'm assuming that this is the same thing. Break down the minerals into their natural or their small, states, which are the actual mineral states, not the compound states, and thus you can actually if you put fulvic acid and humic acid in a mixture, you can actually then combine minerals into a multi-mineral supplement, but because that actually prevents the compounding process, and you're actually going to be able to get them through your body. But otherwise, you have to take each mineral individually, because they're automatically just going to basically magnetically pull towards each other. Is that about right?
Yes, and the difference is I only advocate things that are from nature, and if it has to be touched by man at all. Jack LaLanne used to say this all the time. If it comes in a box or a can and man touched it, get rid of it. So he's the famous exercise guru there for
that's old school. That's old school, and yet it's classic. It's
yeah, it is, because he was right.
Yep, absolutely.
He was right. And what you have to do is you have to say to yourself, like I did back in the beginning. This is how I started. What is necessary for life? What am I? What is my body? And how do I make that happen? So I eventually said the closer you get to nature, the healthier you are. And the farther you get from nature, the less healthy you are. That's exactly what we're talking about with this stuff. The minerals that we're talking about here are from the source of life on the planet. If you look at your body, what is the difference between you and other things? You're alive, okay? What are you made out of? Is it something that man made? No. Nature made it. What did nature make it out of? Minerals. If you go look at a plant in your house and you notice that after you've had it for a while, as the plant grows bigger and bigger and bigger, the soil in the pot shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. That's because the minerals are being turned, the dirt minerals from other plants are being turned into this new plant in this new form. We do the same thing. Instead of being an ocean aquatic creature, we carry the ocean around in us. It's our blood and our lymph system. That's the actual ocean we carry with us. And instead of being rooted to the ground like a plant, we walk around. We're mobile. So we have to carry with us the minerals. That's what food is. The whole point of food is that your body will take whatever you've eaten and try, if it's a natural thing, try to turn it into minerals. So you're
we all it's kind of like us with people. We always try to look for the good in people, and the body seldom finds it in our food supply.
That's right. But that's what it's looking for. Your body is set up to turn your food into minerals. When you get that right, then you say, well, couldn't I really get everything I need, basically, apart from your ego and your taste buds? Couldn't I get everything I need just about from having a form of minerals that I could easily take? That's what these are. Excuse me. The minerals don't have to go through the whole process of the digestion of the stomach. They're conditioned by the stomach to get into the intestine and then be absorbed into the body directly.
Yeah.
That's what they mean by assimilable. And when you're talking about making compounds, well, the body's got to try to break it down, and if it doesn't find any life force in there anyway, it's not going to use it. And if it doesn't have anything else, it'll try to with all these Band-Aid procedures and shortcuts. But what you want to do is get back to nature. The most natural thing you can do, and I call these the keys to health. It's oxygen, water, pure water, oxygenated water, of course, minerals, cleaning out your colon, and having the things that nature has been trying to give you your whole life, but man has gotten in the way so he could make money by taking the source of whatever it is, chopping it all up, putting it in a package, putting pesticides on it, colorings and flavorings, and then sticking it on the shelf and saying, here's your food. Well, wait a minute. That's not really food.
Well,
is it?
I'll be honest with you, Dr. Oxygen. I feel like I'm calling you a superhero or something, but Mr. Oxygen, do you have a cape, by the way? I would probably dismiss you as a crackpot if I didn't actually look, and I dismiss a lot of people as crackpots. Trust me. If I hadn't looked at your products to see that you were actually doing it, as I understand it, the very few people who actually understand the concept of how minerals work, not only outside of the body but inside the body. So I mean, the fact that you've actually like I said, immersed them in the very thing that prevents them from combining, and the way that plants work in nature. In other words, a plant, of course, can only absorb pure minerals, trace minerals from the dirt, and in order to do that, there has to be something that breaks down those minerals, and that's what you basically are mimicking. Nature, and I tell you, if you had just a Centrum type of multivitamin complex thing, I'd probably get on you about it. So, I mean, that's a compliment, trust me.
Well, thank you. Well, vitamins don't work unless you have all the minerals.
Exactly.
There are specific amino acids that your immune system needs that your body cannot make unless it has the real sulfur, the real organic sulfur, like is in the oxy sulfur formula. There are missing things. There's just holes in the pattern all over the place when you start to get into after man's greed, etc. So what they did, a perfect example, in the 50s, Ezra Taft Benson, Secretary of Agriculture, said, farmers don't grow, we'll pay you money not to grow. That way we can control the markets. They said, okay, fine, give us the money. They said, okay, but one thing is you got to take our fertilizer. You got to go to our friend that owns the fertilizer plant over here and use his fertilizer. But don't worry, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as nature. It's not.
Honest.
It's not. They did this in Germany right after the Second World War. They took all their nitrate production for bombs and such, and they turned it into fertilizer plants. When they started creating all their agriculture with artificial fertilizers, that's when the cancer epidemic first started in the world, in Germany, from that fact. The fact that you didn't have the natural form of sulfur and you didn't have all the minerals you needed.
Yeah, well, you combine that with the stream of pharmaceuticals, injectables, vaccines, and everything else. You've got a recipe for direct bodily injection of stuff into your body. Yeah, you got a nightmare on your hands. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back with Mr. Oxygen, MrOxygen.com. Stay tuned.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Well, welcome back to the Corporation Nation, folks. I'm Clint, and my guest today is Ed McCabe, or otherwise known as Mr. Oxygen. Now, Ed, someone was just on the oxysulfur.com site, and the question was, can they pay? The question was actually, can they buy it from you, which I'll correct now, or I'll let you correct. But can you pay for this another way, like a money order or check or another way? And I think that you're probably going to redirect them to oxygenamerica.com.
Yeah, I don't sell anything. All I do is formulate, and then there are people that build the formulas and distribute them. Oxygen America is the master distributor. The least expensive way to go there is to go to the specials area. When you go to oxygenamerica.com, go to the specials, and you'll see there's groupings of products. So the people with the least amount of money, the most important supplements, there's like 3 of them, I think. And then the next, if you can afford a little more, there's 4. Then there's 5, and there's 6 for somebody who really wants to just cover all the bases. Each one is a month's supply, so it makes it really easy. So you just order the special for however many months you want to try it out. And I suggest initially you just give it 3 months, for all the formulas. Just follow the directions. And you start the supplements and see what happens. And you tell us, call back into the show, and you tell us what happens once you start getting the proper amount of minerals, oxygen, and colon cleansing, and ozone into your bloodstream. And that's what these products all have. And that's what I found that the human body was the most deficient in by simply going around the world and interviewing thousands of doctors and asking them what worked best in your practice. This is all over the world because I was lecturing all over the world. Every place I went, I would interview all the local doctors. So what works best for you? What have you found? That someone would say, the majority would say some form of an oxygen supplement. And then there was a lot that said enzymes. And then there was a bunch that said, the mineral supplements. Obviously, it's just cleared up so many things that were all masking. There were really mineral deficiencies masking as diseases. And that's how I see all these things are. There are the basic things you need in your body for health, life and happiness, longevity, all that stuff. And if you put them into your body every day, in my opinion, again, you have the best chance of anyone to make it through this gauntlet we call life with negativity and darkness at every turn for the unwary. You will have an oxygen suit of armor, so to speak. That's in my opinion. I'm not guaranteeing that or making a claim for anything. But think about it. If all of the bacteria, virus, fungus, and pathogens that cause all the diseases, polio, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, they're all associated with, every disease has an associative grouping of bacteria, viruses, etc., that are part of the deal. Well, if they're all anaerobes, and you flood your body with oxygen, which is the name of my book and 4 DVD set, and that's where all the details are and all known ways to oxygenate the body. But if you were to actually do that, to flood your body with oxygen, what do you think your chances would be when you have to go to school, go to work, go to the mall, fly in a commercial airliner with no air, with no oxygen, and the guy sitting next to you is just coming back from Arabia? I mean, think about it. Your best chance in life, in all the situations you could possibly be presented with, is to have a robust immune system, and your immune system runs on oxygen. Now, in the book, there's 131 medical references proving everything I just said. If you look up simply ozone therapy, this is medical ozone therapy. The word therapy has to be on it, otherwise you get all these air pollution articles, that's all red herring stuff anyway. We'll do another show on that. But if you do ozone therapy, you'll get over 2,450 medical articles all telling you everything I've been saying here on the show, proven in clinics and in studies all over the world. One study they analyzed, and the clinics had been doing several billion dosages over the years. They tracked them, several billion dosages of medical-grade ozone. That's billions of dosages. And yet it's not taught in American medical schools? Hello? What's the problem here? What's the problem that our physicians aren't being told there's this whole range of oxygen ozone modalities used in Europe, used in Russia, used in, it's even in Great Britain, in Italy, Germany for sure, Cuba, even the people in Cuba who have maybe a regime that's less libertarian than ours is, they have access to medical ozone therapy injections. And that's the first thing you should think about doing, in my opinion. Again, I'm not promising anyone. Go see your doctor, see your healthcare practitioner, hopefully one skilled in the oxidative and detoxification modalities. But if you're, exposed to some sort of a thing, they're saying it might be a plague or somebody's got this strange cough and a fever, I would think about finding a place, or at least remembering where it is, where you could go to get an ozone injection from an MD or a naturopath in this country, or someplace overseas or someplace else where you could go to get it.
I was talking to, we've got a lot of healthcare professionals that that are friends of mine, and I was talking to them about oxygen, and they said, it's funny, oxygen is actually getting more and more difficult to obtain. Government, through the Obamacare thing, is actually cracking down on a lot of the smaller providers of oxygen, so that there's only going to be, I guess, a few large companies that you can, like some of these home health care and hospitals, can actually order from, and it's basically becoming an ever more controlled marketplace to obtain oxygen. So I suppose that what we're talking about today is a good reason for that, I would think, huh?
Yeah, and there's such things as oxygen concentrators, and they will, right now, you can probably find them in the pawn shops, because somebody will be on the oxygen and then they'll pass away because they need to use oxygen for the treatment. They use the stable form of it, not an active form of it. And so their oxygen concentrators that they use to supplement their breathing will be there. And although it's not recommended people use it, I would think in a plague situation that even though it's not as high of an oxygen concentration as pure medical grade bottled oxygen, USP oxygen is, that in a pinch, let's say the government is out burning the houses of the dead, people aren't going to be worrying about things like, well, is this a perfect situation or a perfect setup? So they're going to.
We could all sit around with a big hookah pipe hooked up to an oxygen collector and survive the apocalypse. Is that what you're saying?
It may come to that. I think about the old medieval "bring out your dead, bring out your dead." The guy's got a cart full of dead people and he's collected them. Every morning there'd be more dead people to throw on the cart. Well, I've been warning people that this idea that the media does not tell people that their medical oxygen ozone injections are available may create a situation where people are behind barricades believing there's no cure and bringing out their dead.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We'll be back, folks. Stay tuned.
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water, like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Running water never goes stale, so you gotta just keep on flowing, keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on. Under the sky, under the heaven, there is but one family.
All right, folks, welcome back.
Do not believe in stars.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about, and I wanted to, I'm trying to understand how these two things work together, and I'm just going to read out of another book I have, Wellness Secrets for Life. It's Dr. H. Ott's book. It says in 1923, Dr. Otto Warburg was awarded the Nobel Prize for his research in the ways hydrogen and oxygen, of course we know H2O, works in the cells of the human body. For the last 30 years, nutritional researchers have compiled a list of foods that either rise, which means they're alkaline in nature, or lower, which means they're acidic, the pH in the human body. Now, pH actually stands for parts hydrogen. Remember how many parts hydrogen is in your body. So that basically, if you test your saliva with those little strips, nitrazine hydrogen paper, and you see that your saliva is below 7, basically you're similar to what we're talking about with the oxygen, you're giving your body basically an open invitation to harbor disease. So you want your body in a good sort of area that's more, I wouldn't say it's more alkaline, but this is another aspect of that goes hand in hand with the oxygenation of the body. Of course, terminal cancer patients, when you test their saliva, it's always in the acidic range because disease likes acid. So Of course, to have healthy cells, you need adequate oxygen and hydrogen, of course, the factors that make up water. And then each percentage point of pH, parts hydrogen, means either an increase or decrease of oxygen and hydrogen by 30 times. So I guess I'm curious how the acidic versus alkaline aspect of the body coincides with what we're talking about, because basically if you're acidic, that means, I know it means that somehow oxygen isn't going and being utilized by the body. I just don't know how.
Right. Well, you've hit on something that I came across and put together in my head, and I've never heard anyone mention this, but I've written papers on it. So it must be like original stuff here. But there are three things that happen with oxygen's usage. When the body gets adequate amounts of oxygen, one of the very first things it does is it raises its pH into the alkaline range. The second thing that happens exactly at the same time, as part of that process, is the amount of electral voltage potential, the EV. In other words, there's a whole, most Americans have heard about alkaline versus acid. Right along with that, but hidden for most Americans, is the electrovolt potential of the cell. How many volts is your cell? You say that, and most Americans believe that a certain pH above that, into the alkaline ranges, cancer cannot exist. In fact, disease cannot exist. That's correct. But did you also know that the electrovolt potential of the cell, the actual voltage of the cell, is the same thing? There's I don't have the research in front of me, but I wrote a paper on it, and it says that the voltage potential of the cell is determined by how much oxygen is in the cell. So if you've got more oxygen in the cell, you have a higher EV potential, you have a higher microvoltage of the cell itself. And the cell, above a certain range, can't be cancerous, can't be sick. Below, in other words, when you're, again, we get back to the life force, the vitality coming from the sun and from nature and from what we eat, which is storing that energy. But that energy, that life force energy, when yours starts to drop off because you've been sick for a while and you're not breathing, you're not exercising, you're congested and all this stuff, well, your voltage is dropping and dropping and dropping very slowly, and it's turning into a factory for disease in your body because there's no life force or no, its consequence, there's no electricity. So it's the same thing with the alkaline and the acid. When you get sick, your body must be acidic. When you get sick, your body must be low on voltage. So there are doctors and people around that teach you how to put electricity. They have units they sell. There's units you could lay on. Like, for example, you can go to MRS Oxygen, MRSoxygen.com. That will show you a machine, which is, you lay on this machine, and it gives an electrical boost, that's what it's designed to do, to all the cells in your body. And so other doctors have come out with like a thing you hold in your hand, and a Tennant is what I'm thinking of, Dr. Tennant, T-N-N-E-N-T, and you stick it on your pressure points in certain places of your body, and the design of that is to hopefully raise the voltage of that. Now, if you're looking at the pH of the body, the best way to judge your pH is not your saliva. It's actually the first urine of the morning. You get up out of bed, the very first urine that comes out of you, that's what you put the pH paper on, and you look at that. I was taught that that's the most accurate way. Part of the reason is that the body has different pH values throughout itself. Some places are extremely acid, stomach acid. Some places are very alkaline. Well, that's where you get into the colon and the intestine. And then the other organs, they each have their own frequency and their own pH. So there is no one pH for everybody. But you could use it as a gauge. Just like last week I was telling everybody, you could use it as a gauge your health gauge is the color of your blood. If your blood is a bright cardinal red, you're probably pretty healthy. I mean, unless you've been injured or something or poisoned. But you're probably pretty healthy, where the vast majority of people in our society have black blood or dark purple or dark brown blood. And I always tell people, go to the movies. Outside, you got the blood bank in the truck out there, and go give blood. Or just, if you don't want to do that, just go up and look at the blood in the bags sitting on the table that they just took out of everybody who lives in the same place you live in. Look at the color of the blood. It's black, it's brown, it's dark purple. It's the same thing. Those are all acid people with low voltage. So again, there are ways you can just check your health so easily. You don't need all these diagnosticians and all that unless you really want to hone in on one particular thing. But just in general, your level of health is showing very plainly in the color of your blood, and your pH value, and the voltage potential throughout your whole body. So
I hate those acid people. those acid people, I swear. They're eating popcorn with fake butter sauce at the movies. It's horrible.
So after the apocalypse, you're going to be the only one left.
I know. Everybody's going to be zombified around my house, and I'm going to be in here sucking on oxygen. Well, me and you. So let me just clear something up. Now, you said, should I use the nitrazine, the hydrogen paper with the urine?
Yes. First,
the stuff you're supposed to actually put in or use for saliva.
Yeah, because it's the same range.
It's the same thing, but I shouldn't do both.
Well, you can do both if you want. See how they correlate.
I would
keep a chart. See how they match up.
Yeah. Well, no, I meant want to use the same strip after I pee on it. But it was just a joke. We'll be back, folks. Stay tuned.
And the men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart, closer to the heart. Blacksmith and the artist reflected in their art.
All right, folks, welcome back.
Their creativity.
I want to thank you again, Ed, for joining me for a second week. I definitely invite you back at some point in the future. I don't know when, but very, very enjoyable to be talking to you and to be actually talking about someone someone that's done so much research and truly is trying to help people as opposed to just sell them a product, that I know is crap. Like I said, I would have given you hell if you were selling the typical supplements that I see in the store, just because of my personal experiences and the research I've done. I understand how this stuff that they're selling, it literally is causing disease because it builds up in the body because your body cannot. It's inorganic. A compound is inorganic, so your body can't actually use it. It has to be water soluble. It has to be organic. It has to be a certain size so it can actually be absorbed through the body. I mean, and as we were talking about, all these chemicals in foods, all of these things that are being sprayed, whether they're designed to be this way or it's just happening because they are what they are. Our bodies are being inundated with chemicals, especially in the food supply, that actually stop the digestion process, not just the digestion process itself, but the actual physical ability for the body to take those nutrients, take those elements and those compounds, break them down, and actually send them to the places in the body that are needed. And so we have all these modern diseases. A fruit today has 500 times less, health mineral content than it did just 20, 30 years ago.
Even way back then, you have the Senate documents proving that the farms are depleted. And that was back then. So here we are now, 60 years later? Mm-hmm. What kind of soil do you have? So what you've got is this artificial hard pan, almost empty of minerals. So you've got pretty food that you can starve eating, basically. not completely starved because, you know, the body's very resilient, but you'll think that you're getting the good food, you're getting the good water, and man, the city tells me that fluoride's good for my teeth, you know, my kids' teeth, and then the EPA's own union comes out against it, and it's like, well, what's going on? So it creates a, what is that condition called? Cognitive dissonance, where you don't believe anything anymore. And then that part of that is, I believe there's an opposing force to life, which is called darkness, which is against all life. It's, if you look up transhumanism, that sort of thing, people are saying that the objective of darkness is to turn us all from humans into robots, remove all our feelings, replace all our body parts, and let life carry on as an AI, artificial intelligence, because it's much easier to control. It doesn't speak out for itself, et cetera, for all the reasons the dictator would love to have people just be robots.
Well, it's a form of genetically engineering the population, just like we do in the labs and creating new life. It's a way of genetically engineering the population through its supply of both food and medicine. It literally is altering the way our bodies work to the point where we will need some form of external, if you will, hardware, machinery, drugs, permanent oxygen tanks, whatever, to sustain life. I mean, transhumanism is a funny thing that way because it doesn't necessarily involve a robotic part, although that's the plan. It is specifically creating a need, a dependence upon such things. Because we can't live without them, and it's very similar to what you see in patents. Those new life forms they're creating, they can't live without, they can't reproduce by themselves. They can't, the seeds are only female with no, there's all this crazy stuff that's happening out there, and in my humble opinion, I'm sure you'll agree, that's exactly what they're doing to the human species through this craziness.
Yeah, it started with just taking our own greed, the human, because everybody's trying to get by and get over. And so they just manipulate that. They saw that the heads of the corporations saw that they got a rise in sales. So they do a little more and we got a more profit over this area where we don't have to really have nutrients in the food anymore. So let's do more of that. So finally the humans got to the place where we're so weakened and our educational system is so dumbed down. I mean, if you were to look at what an eighth grader, I just saw an article where you say an eighth grader had to know. I remember just even my sojourn through the high school back in let's say the 60s, the 50s and 60s, through the schools. What they have to learn was so much more than people have to learn now. And it was more of a teach you to think for yourself kind of a thing. Now it's all programmed so you could be a good little factory worker and go home and not consume too much. Don't be too much of a burden on the system. And if you are, then we have death panels in the hospitals that decides who lives and who's the useless eater, and they get rid of the useless eater. I mean, this kind of stuff has got nothing to do with humanity. This kind of stuff has nothing to do with life itself, which doesn't judge anything and just creativity and a bounty of fulfilledness rather than this empty shell of life where you're depressed and 85% of all Americans are taking drugs now, prescription drugs as I speak. Why do 85% of our people think that there's something so wrong with them? It's because they've been given crap their entire life. Crap in the educational system, crap in the food, crap in the medicine, crap in the healers, and everything's been dumbed down, regimentized, officialized, stamped.
But the infomercial on TV said I should talk to my doctor about getting this drug. What are you talking about?
Well, you go to the doctor and he says, what can I do for you? You say, well, Doc, I saw on TV, what about this? And they named the latest drug, and the doctor goes, oh, I haven't heard of that one yet. So he quickly runs to the PDA and he goes, let's see, what is that? Okay. Well, you want to try it?
I just called the manufacturer. They said they'd take me out to dinner and wine and dine me. So, hey, you want to try this drug? It's basically what it is.
The doctors get, stethoscopes and notebooks and computers, all these gifts from the pharmaceutical industry.
I've noticed that. It's disturbing.
And this is just as they enroll in medical school. They haven't done anything or graduated yet. So their influence starts right at the very beginning. Herbert Lay, former FDA commissioner, said that the curriculum in our medical schools, now remember I said, none of the stuff that we've been talking about for 2 weeks here, oxygen, being able to rid the body of anaerobes, active forms of oxygen, being able to rid the body of, none of that is taught in American medical schools. And Herbert Lay, who is former FDA commissioner, said, what the curriculum has decided is not what the people want, not what the doctors need, but it's to fulfill the requests of the pharmaceutical industry. And they do things like build the next building and to put the new wing on the hospital and put some doctor's name on it or something. But it's all their money, because it's billions and billions of dollars. And I'm not saying these are bad people. They're just I was watching a TV show Royal Pains the other night, where this concierge doctor to the Hamptons, and they would call people from the city idiots. Instead of city idiots, they'd be idiots. And so it's just people that are grown up in the culture, and all they see is TV, and all they do is talk to other people that see TV, and they divorce themselves from their past, their parents, and the older people that have all the experience and wisdom, and they just parrot what's in the media. Now, the media is lying to us.
I get the impression, though, that while the doctor's prescribing drugs to people, in the background, they're like hoarding oxygen. Actually for their family, they're, here, have some oxygen, Jimmy. But for other people's kids, it's like, here's Ritalin combined with this antidepressant and this antipsychotic. Hope you don't kill yourself.
Hey, a doc's got to earn a living, right?
I guess. Hey, you got anything else you want to get out? We got a couple phone calls if you'd like to take some.
Okay, well, no, let's jump into the phones.
All right, Richard in Washington. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Yeah, great discussion. I would like to bring up the same subject I brought up last time. There's two ways to get energy into the system. One is by digestion, and we have the equipment to do that in our bodies, as all humans have the digestive system. The other way is fermentation. Fermentation releases insulin. It also creates kind of an alkaline situation that prevents the mineral uptake, and so you don't get the minerals. And then you create an acid situation with the release of the sugar. So I think that's the big dumbing down, is the fact that we're being told not to eat animal products, which they are the things that we can digest.
Well, we'll get into that after the break. Stay on the phone there, bud. Stay tuned.
Did you see the frightened ones? Did you hear the falling bombs? Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter when the promise of a brave new world unfurled beneath the clear blue sky?
Welcome back, folks.
Look, Mummy, there's no place.
Oh, the chemtrails. So the question I believe that is or the statement that's posed here is of course dealing with the with digestion. As we've said, though, there's a real problem with the mineral content in both the soil, and of course that transfers into the plant life, where the cows or the pigs or the chickens eat the plant life, and since there's not much nutrition in the feed, you don't get a lot of nutrition from the meat or from the vegetables or whatever you're eating, which is the purpose, of course, of supplementation. What say one of the things that Richard from Washington brought up is the concept of fermentation, that some foods sit in your, ferment basically in your body, and what do you say to that, sir?
Well, oxygen is the antithesis of fermentation in a lot of ways. It's the solution to fermentation. Fermentation is a primitive form of creating energy. You can create energy with fermentation, but then you're into an area like a cancer cell, which is a low order of, in fact, Dr. Warburg said that there's only one prime cause for cancer, and that's the lack of oxygen in the cells. when the cell's respiratory enzymes get so damaged from a lack of oxygen, the cell can no longer get its energy from oxygen. And so the only way that cell can now live is to ferment. So the cell ferments its energy. And a fermenting energy type cell is a plant type cell. And you can see these under the microscope. They look green. But they're plant type cell that just grows and grows and grows. It has no higher function. Now, when you put enough active oxygen into a body that has a background terrain of basically living on fermentation, candida, fermentation disease, cancer, if you actually flood that body with active forms of oxygen long enough, the body will naturally choose the most healthy form. Like if there's different oils, let's say you get a real bad rancid French fry oil in your life, your body eventually, if you start eating correctly, will start swapping out all the bad oil for the good oil, the natural oil that's supposed to be in your diet. Same thing with cancer cells. The body will naturally choose the higher survival rate. It's, nature's survival. The higher survival rate goes to those cells that are healthy and using oxygen. The problem is you didn't have enough. So the body couldn't make a choice. But once you give the body that choice, you want to have an overgrowth of candida? Body's natural wisdom goes, no, thank you. Do you want to have an overgrowth of cancer cells? Body goes, no, thank you, but you got to give me a way to replace all that, which is, we were discussing the ills and the evils of society and darkness encroaching upon our lives through every aspect of our existence. Well, the positive side, the more, if I may say so, spiritual side with more life energy in it is oxygen, because oxygen holds the life force energy, that strong charge, especially the active forms of oxygen. It's the active forms of oxygen that go in and immediately detoxify the body, will take out everything having to do with fermentation. If it's not supposed to be in the body, it's not going to stay in the body. The body will choose, as long as the body has enough energy left and enough of its structure left, the body will choose the more beneficial way of breathing, eating, drinking, digesting, and all that. It's just that we're at this low energy, low oxygen junction where the hordes basically are reaching up and taking over and trying to pull us down into the muck. And we have to consciously choose. We can't ignore my message here tonight. We can't ignore the message I gave last week, which is flood your body with oxygen, because things are bad now, but as the pollution increases, and the oxygen level declines, we're going to find that everybody is going to have to supplement with oxygen just to stay alive. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, we're all going to look like Borg, basically. And basically the primary factor in a healthy cell is very, very simple. This is why water and air is so important, why oxygen is so important. What makes a healthy cell? Adequate oxygen and hydrogen molecules in the extracellular fluids around the cells. That's how you measure a healthy cell. Anything else you got, Richard?
My question or challenge to that would be, how come there's so many antioxidants in the whole system?
We covered that.
Well, but my solution would be the fact that you eat real food, which are good quality animal products. You don't ferment, and you allow the oxygen to be fully utilized by the hemoglobin and brought into the system because of the hydrochloric acid that increases the ionic mineralization.
It's funny, Ed. I actually typed in the word antioxidant, and a lot of the companies out there actually call their antioxidants antioxygen, which I think is very funny. This is a fallacy, in other words.
They're lying to you, Richard. They're lying to you. When you opened with deposit antioxidants, antioxidants are stopping oxygen. They don't stop oxygen. They're lying to you. They've had a bunch of PhDs that the drug companies propped up to spread this message over and over until everyone said, well, I don't want to seem like an idiot. I'm going to have to say that antioxidants are going to, prevent the damage from oxygen, which is all a lie. The whole thing is a lie. They're trying to turn us against ourselves by lying to us. Antioxidants regulate oxygen metabolism. when you then substitute that into your argument, you see that it all falls into place.
Yeah.
The antioxidants are necessary. Fresh food, dark green and yellow vegetables, basically.
So in other words, they don't fight oxygen. They love each other, basically.
They love each other.
Yes, it's a match made in heaven. Let's take Bill in Alabama. Bill, welcome to the show.
Clint, thanks for inviting me back. Mr. Oxygen, I was your last caller last week, and we ran out of time, unfortunately. I'd like to ask my question again, please, sir.
Sure, go.
I know that there's a lot of people who have been cured of cancer at home by using the food-grade hydrogen peroxide, oxidating their cells. And I'd like to know if you have had any experience with this, and if what's your opinion?
I thought I said this last week, but maybe I did. Dr. Charles H. Farr, biochemist, Ph.D., professor of medicine, started the International Biooxidative Medicine Foundation. They gave me several awards for the public awareness that I was creating about the use of these things, including the hydrogen peroxide. I've done it myself. I think at the very end of the show I said I was in a room that didn't have any oxygen in it, would not support the flame from a match. You couldn't light a match or a blowtorch, and I'm sitting in that room for half an hour, no problem at all, because I had been taking the hydrogen peroxide food grade at a very reduced, very dilute level for months beforehand. It was my first experience with detoxification. I had a fever for 2 weeks, I coughed up phlegm for 2 weeks, and I had diarrhea for 2 weeks. So that was the 3 stages I went through. But after that, after I did everything you could do there, including trying to get drunk when you're on peroxide, it's impossible, because drunk is lack of oxygen to the brain, and you've got so much oxygen in your system, you just can't do it. So you could win bets, drinking people under the table. That's just an aside. But I went from there to the direct ozone IV injections, which nobody in the world was doing. Down here in Florida, there were some people doing that, and I moved into the house where they were doing it and did it right along with them, and we were studying our blood with dark field microscope as we went along. And ozone kicked peroxide's butt, I must say that. So there are different ways of getting more and more powerful ways of cleaning your body out. There's pluses and minuses to all of them. I came up with the OxyLift, OXYLIFT, as an alternative to peroxide, because some people, like myself, when I got to the higher levels of peroxide daily, I always had fire in my stomach, indigestion in my stomach. It's because, I'm a white-skinned, blue-eyed, fair-haired boy, and the chemical was just too harsh for me, even at the reduced rates. So there's good and bad to everything, and it's better, I think, to have the OxyLift, because it'll end up doing just about the same thing, the detoxes and everything else, in my opinion, and also give you all the C minerals and C plasma that your body needs. So there's lots of ways to get to Rome.
Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks for the call, Bill. MrOxygen.org or .com, OxygenHealth.com. The book, Flood Your Body with Oxygen. There's also a 4 CD or DVD set. I'm going to say I highly recommend this. I'm going to get it myself. Thanks, Ed, and we'll talk to you later.